Tonight I offer this of our Torah, these reflections on chapter 5 in Sarah Hurwitz's book, Here All Along. Chapter 5, entitled Becoming a Great Person, Self-Restraint and Self-Transcendence. Most of us know the golden rule: do unto others as I would have them do unto me. I've had many people say, Rabbi, I don't need religion. If I've got the golden rule, really, what else is there? Sarah Hurwitz agrees. She said, to be a good person, you don't necessarily need to have a religious faith. But, she adds to it, to be a great person, you need something. And her faith is Judaism. And that's where she has found inspiration for how to live not just as a good person, but as a great person. For she says in this chapter, Judaism holds a higher standard than I would set for myself. She begins first with talking about what Judaism says about language and the power of language to heal or to harm. As the book of Proverbs teaches, the power of life and death is in the tongue. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel reminds us that the Holocaust did not begin with the crematoria, but with uttering evil words, with defamation, language, and propaganda. Need I say more when we see what is happening in the world around us today? Sarah Hurwitz, of course, lived in Washington, D.C., in that political bubble of gossip and backstabbing. And so she knew the danger of language in that context. And she said, Judaism taught me a lot. You know, we used to casually in conversation just talk about other people and didn't necessarily think about how damaging it was to the person. But once we've said something negative, it passes on to the next person and to the next, and then what happens to the reputation? And she said, Judaism really challenged me to think before I speak. Will it humiliate someone, what I'm about to say? Will it unfairly harm their reputation or cause them to feel indebted to me? That Judaism teaches that even if it's true, we shouldn't pass along something that could harm someone. Even if it's true, we're not supposed to pass along that information unless we need to protect somebody else. Then we can say something. If we know that someone is possibly going to harm you or someone else, we're allowed to share that piece of information. But otherwise, if it's just good, juicy gossip about someone that isn't going to benefit anyone, and Sarah said, boy, is that hard in Washington, D.C. To be a great person, she said, I need to aspire to something else. And how do I do that? And the rest of the chapter then lays out these two ways in which we can do that, through self-restraint and self-transcendence, and what the connection between both of those things are. She says, Judaism does not require us to refrain from the good life, from enjoying good food, from enjoying ourselves in this body, but we need to sanctify what we enjoy. That's what it means to be a religious person. That to take a moment and say a blessing before you consume some delicious piece of food, to remember the source of where it came from, to remember that we're grateful for what we're about to enjoy. That we should work hard, but we should take the Shabbat off, because even God couldn't work 7 days a week, that we need time to refresh our spirits, to join in community, to be with family, to rest. That engaging in sexual activity is considered to be a good thing in Judaism, but don't commit adultery. It depends on who you have that relationship with. So that there are some guardrails, but we should enjoy our life with those guardrails. And self-restraint is necessary for self-transcendence. Because if we can't even have some discipline around ourselves, how can we go beyond ourselves? How can we reach higher? Rabbi Daniel Hartman, who is the head of the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, teaches this. We need to see the needs of others and implicate ourselves as part of the solution. That to be a religious person means I think beyond the end of my nose, that I think about other people and what their needs are. Yes, that question that Cain asked to God, am I my brother's keeper? Judaism says, yes, you are your brothers and your sisters, your siblings' keepers. That is our responsibility, not just your own keeper. We have a responsibility to make this world more just and more whole. Last night I was talking with the North Park students and told them that the word that we use for the money that we contribute to others is called tzedakah, and it doesn't mean charity, but it means justice. Charity comes from the Latin root caritas, which means something that is dear or is loved. But tzedakah is not something we do out of the goodness of our heart. Tzedakah is a requirement. It's not optional, it's mandatory. It's not given when we're in the mood, because if it was just based on our heart, we'd say, today I don't feel like it. Maybe tomorrow I'll feel like it, yesterday I did, but not today. But we don't rely on that in Judaism because, you know what? Sometimes our heart doesn't always move us to do the right thing at the right moment because we're tired, because we have other things on our mind, because we just don't feel like it at this time. But tzedakah says, no, we must share our resources. They are not ours alone, that whatever we happen to be blessed to possess monetarily, material, or in any kind of way, they are gifts from God. Jewish tradition teaches us that even if we're the recipient of tzedakah, even if we are given money to help us in a particular situation or food or whatever, that we still have a requirement to give to others. I love that idea, that everybody is required to give, to think about what that does to create community, a community of justice and of love. And the importance of chesed, of loving kindness, that we need each other's loving kindness, so we can't live in the world without the care and the kindness of each other. There's a story that's told in the Talmud about Rabbi Yochanan, who came to the bedside of his student, Rabbi Chia bar Abba. And at his bedside, he sat down next to him and he took his hands and he offered words of blessing, and Rabbi Chia bar Abba was healed. Shortly after that, though, Rabbi Yochanan got sick. And another one of his friends, Rabbi Hanina, came to his bedside and sat with him and took his hands and healed him, just like Rabbi Yochanan had done for Chia bar Abba. And the rabbis asked this question, why does Rabbi Yochanan need someone else to heal him? He clearly has the power to do so because he healed Chia bar Abba. And they answer this, a prisoner cannot free themselves from prison. I love that notion. A prisoner cannot free themselves from prison. We need each other, even if we are smart and we are powerful, even if we have many resources, we need the love of each other in order to be healed in this world. And then she goes on to talk about how do we treat animals, and that how we treat animals is a measure of the kind of love and kindness that we'll bring to this world. There is a story that's in the book of Deuteronomy that just happened to be that my Torah study class was reading today about what happens if you want to take eggs out of a nest because you would like to take those eggs. Perhaps they will hatch into birds that you can use for yourself, or perhaps there'll be eggs that you can eat. That we as human beings have needs, and sometimes we have to get them from animals. But the book of Deuteronomy says you can't just grab those eggs willy-nilly. You have to think about the feelings of the mother whose children these are. And so the book of Deuteronomy says you need to shoo away the mother bird before you take the eggs out of the nest. You need to think about the feelings of an animal, even a bird. That how we treat animals affects our character. If we have to be careful about how we treat animals, how much the more so we'll be careful about how we treat human beings. And so we learn compassion, not just from how we treat each other, but if we learn to treat animals in a certain way, then we'll be more compassionate to each other. Certainly something that we are lacking in our world today and need. as Diane has been teaching us and singing so beautifully. In our Torah this week, we read the story about the Israelites going through the parted sea to freedom on the other side, that this is a story about the birth of ourselves as a people. And what happens after this miraculous moment? And everybody has pictures in their mind about what the parting of the sea looks like. There's so many illustrations of it. That Moses lifts up his staff and the sea parts and people walk through to the other side. And then the waters close and the sea goes back to where it was. And the people are on the other side in freedom. And at first they sing and dance. They dance with Miriam. They dance with Moses. They take their timbrels. And then what happens the next day? They start complaining immediately. We don't have water to drink. What are we going to do for food? They've just witnessed the biggest miracle. And they already don't have faith. They're fearful. They're whiny. They complain. Now that they're out in the wilderness, there doesn't seem to be a clear roadmap for them to follow or where they're going to go or what they need to do. That in slavery, it was hard, but at least they knew where their next meal was going to come from or where they were going to sleep. But now that they are free, they whine and they complain. I always wonder at this moment if God had planned for them to go to Mount Sinai to give them Torah, or for that moment that God saw that without a roadmap for how to behave in our lives, we were just going to be whiners. And that God knew that God needed to bring us to Mount Sinai and to give us the Torah, to give us the instruction, to give us the teaching, to give us the roadmap, the way that we needed to live in our lives, because left to our own devices, maybe we would be good people. But if we wanted to aspire to something higher, to be in a covenantal relationship with God, to repair the world, to bring justice and peace and kindness, we would need the Torah. In the Talmud, the rabbis argue, what is more important? Is it more important to study? We know how important it is in Judaism to study our text. Or is it more important to do that which is righteous and good? And in typical rabbinic fashion, this is how they answer that question, right? Everybody in my congregation knows if I ask an either-or question, they know that I'm fooling them and that the answer is both, right? Because we don't have one or the other. But they answer this one even more cleverly. They said study is more important because it leads to doing. So they don't have to choose one or the other. That by study we understand how to live a life in which we learn self-restraint and self-transcendence. That through study we learn how to appreciate that which we have in the world, to live within certain guidelines so that we can grow and be the best people we can be, and to reach out to others with kindness and love, and to bring justice and peace. The study and the doing is an ongoing effort, but through that, we pray that we will find that self-transcendence and to connect deeply in love with others, to connect deeply within ourselves, to rise above and to become the best people we can be, and through that, to feel the presence of God, of holiness, of divinity in our lives. Shabbat Shalom. We continue together now on page 586 with Elaine. Please rise.